Today, we're diving into the worldview of a writer who goes by the name the Appalachian Gorilla. And it all really boils down to one single powerful question he thinks we've completely forgotten how to answer. What is worth dying for? So right off the bat, the author lays out this core conflict from his own life. He talks about growing up in a world where you had to fight for absolutely everything. Your respect, your neighborhood, your reputation. That's the lion. But then, as an adult with a lot more to lose, he felt like he was forced to change his entire strategy. He had to learn to become the fox, shifting from just pure confrontation to, cunning. And this slide kind of breaks down those two mindsets perfectly. On one hand, you've got the lion. It's all about raw strength, honor, defending your family, no questions asked. But on the other hand, you've got the fox, totally focused on strategic survival, on spotting the traps, and knowing when it's smart to back down. The author says that even though he was basically forced to become the fox just to make it, that lion inside him, it never really went away.
So you gotta ask, right? What could possibly force such a huge change in a person? Well, the author argues it wasn't really a personal choice at all. It was a reaction to this massive economic earthquake. He claims that the whole story we were sold about globalization, it was just wrong. It wasn't one big success story. It was a tale of two completely different economies.
And he hammers this point home by quoting the economist Mark Blythe. See, when someone told Blythe how great America was doing from globalization, his response was pretty blunt. Just go to Moline, Illinois. The author calls places like this sacrifice zones, the parts of the country that basically paid the bill for progress that happened somewhere else. His argument is just so simple. Go look for yourself.
And here's pretty much how the author sees that disconnect. He argues that while, corporate profits and CEO pay just went to the moon, the actual wealth of the average worker, it went absolutely nowhere. For all the people living in those sacrifice zones, the prosperity that globalization was supposed to create just never showed up.
To really understand how we got to this point, the author is adamant that we have to unlearn what we think we know about economics. He offers up a totally different history of money itself, not as some tool for trade, but as a kind of social contract.
Now get this, because it's a pretty radical retelling of where money comes from. The author wants us to forget all about the idea of bartering. He argues that money didn't start as a way to trade things, but as a way to keep society from falling apart. If one person hurts another, the chieftain steps in and assigns a payment to stop a revenge spiral. And once you start standardizing those payments for different harms, there you go. You have the very beginning of a currency.
So this timeline shows the author's theory playing out. He kicks it off in 2008 when the government printed a ton of money. But he says it didn't cause inflation right away because most of it was just being saved up by baby boomers for retirement. It wasn't actually being spent. But then a perfect storm hits. Those same boomers start retiring and getting ready to spend that money at the exact same time that COVID stimulus checks put cash directly into everybody else's pockets. And just like that, all that dormant money floods into circulation. Okay, so how did all that new money actually cause the inflation we saw? The author uses a really simple analogy to explain it. Let's just walk through the logic here. All right, scenario 1. Imagine it's just you and me. We each have $10, and there's only one single cup for sale between us. The absolute most that cup can ever cost is $10, right? Because that's all either one of us has. The amount of money in the system creates a hard cap on the price. But now, check out scenario 2. What if suddenly we have $1 billion between us? Well, that exact same cup could now theoretically sell for $500 million. It's the same logic, a whole lot more money, chasing the exact same amount of stuff. And, in the author's view, this is precisely what happened when all that stimulus money hit the economy. And here it is. This is the author's central claim. How do you get that price down without actually taking the money away? You don't. Instead, you add more people. You spread that same $1 billion across 100 million people, and all of a sudden, each person only has $10 again. The price of that cup has to crash right back down. You've just diluted the money supply. So this analogy, it leads us directly to what the author presents as this massive fork in the road for the government. With inflation going crazy, he claims they were faced with a really stark choice, and either path had huge political consequences. And here are the two options he puts on the table. Option 1, you could drain all that extra money out of the system by just raising taxes through the roof. It would work, but it's basically political suicide. Or option 2, don't take the money away, just dilute it. Increase the population to spread all that capital thinner. According to the author, the government chose option 2. Now, this choice, in the author's mind, wasn't just some dry economic decision. He frames it as a deep, profound moral failure, a final betrayal of a generation that he feels was already left for dead. He lays out this whole list of grievances, arguing that for something like 40 years, instead of fighting for the people in these sacrifice zones, the system just kind of shrugged. When the jobs vanished, it was just written off as a skill issue. He points to things like private prisons, bankrupt cities, and struggling families as proof of a system that didn't just fail its people, it actively sold them out. And this brings us all the way back around, right back to that first primal question. He connects these giant, impersonal economic forces directly to our most personal responsibility. He's asking, if you're not going to fight for the future of your own kids, what are you going to fight for? What's the point of being a lion if not for this? This is where the author's argument gets to its most radical, its most extreme point. He describes the economic decay of these regions with an incredibly brutal analogy. He says if some outside nation had done this much damage to them, it would have been considered an act of war. But because it came from the inside, people just didn't fight back. And for him, that logic leads to only one possible conclusion, that the only way to protect these communities is through balkanization, the idea of breaking the country up into smaller, independent states. So in the end, the author's perspective is that this inaction wasn't just a political failure, it was a moral one. It was a failure of courage. A community that chose to be the fox when he believes it should have been the lion, fleeing and abandoning the homes and the futures that their ancestors built. And that's a pretty stark and provocative thought to end on, isn't it? Was it a strategic retreat, or was it just cowardice?